Hi friends, welcome. If you're new here, my name is Kristen and my channel is by Kristen Elaine. Today we're going to be talking about how to manage your finances to feel more confident and empowered. I'm also going to be sharing with you in this video the steps that I took exactly to get myself out of debt and stop living paycheck to paycheck. So if you're in that situation, I completely understand. I've been there. I'm going to give you steps you can take so that you can feel more financially abundant. The very first step on managing your finances is stop making money your enemy. If you want to have the relationship that you want with your money, which I think is what you want to have a good relationship with money, the very first thing you need to do is understand that you are the one controlling your money. You are the boss of your money. You're the master of your money. So at the end of the day, if you are constantly thinking badly about money or talking bad about money or putting money down in the same way you would do a friend, you will no longer have money as your friend. Make money your friend at the end of the day. That's where we want to get to, because money's always working for you. Whether you believe that or not, money's always going to do what you want it to do. So at the end of the day, make money your friend. Step number 2 is getting to know your money. Hey girl, you look cute. What are you doing? I'm just getting ready for my date. You're going on a date? With who? Well, they're coming to the house. You can meet them. Yeah, I don't mind meeting them. This is so nice. This is beautiful. Thank you for the flower. Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? What are you doing? Oh, hey friend, I wanted to introduce you. This is my finances. This is really weird. What do you mean it's weird? This isn't weird. You told me to get to know them. What do you mean this is them? This is just a laptop. No, I didn't mean getting to know your finances. I mean, yeah, I guess you could get to know your finances this way, but you don't need to wine and dine it. Just got all pretty for nothing, huh? This is so strange. I don't know what's going on here. You don't actually have to take your finances out on a date. In a way, you're trying to get to know your financial self. Who are you financially? Who do you want to be financially? Unfortunately, I wish that we were just born with all the financial knowledge we could ever need, but chances are that we didn't grow up with financial knowledge and education. I didn't. My parents probably didn't. And what the hell? We're not even taught in schools how to be financially stable or how to manage our finances. So we have to turn to things like YouTube or Google, and it's really unfortunate. Just a disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor, so you do have to do what's best for you and consult your own professionals. This is just telling you what I did, and hopefully it will help you at the end of the day. You can't just be trusting random people that you find on the internet. That's Bailey. Say hi, Bailey. Hi. Just like a date, you want to ask yourself some questions to get to know your finances. Are you a saver? Are you a spender? What kind of money habits do you have? Are you constantly going over budget? Do you rely on your credit cards a lot? Do you have any clue how to manage your finances? Do you know what a budget is? Do you have one? Think of all the questions that you need to ask yourself to get to know your money and your own finances. The first thing you want to do when you're getting to know your finances is start with something really easy, and that's how much income are you bringing in every single month. And if you are a W-2 employee, meaning you have a paycheck every single month, week, bi-weekly, it doesn't matter the time frame. If you're getting paid by paycheck every single month, you just add up the paychecks that you're bringing home, not the gross, but what you're actually bringing home is what you want to know. Because after that, we're gonna go into expenses and we're gonna see if your income can cover your expenses. So start there. It should be relatively easy. You should be able just to pull up your bank statement or pull it up on your phone and look through and see when you got paid and just add up for 1 month or 2 months how much you're getting paid.
I find examples really helpful, so I just pulled up a random pay stub from the internet. I'm going to ignore most of this information, but if you are looking at your pay stubs and how much you get paid and you have your pay stubs for the month, add up this net pay. So this is actually what gets paid into your bank account every single pay period. So you're going to add up however many pay periods you get, you want to add that up and include that as your income for the entire month. And this is the number that you would grab. It's usually at the bottom of your pay stub.
Now, if you have an irregular paycheck where you don't make the same amount every single month, you might want to look at a couple of months just to get an idea of what you're bringing in on average. If you're a small business owner or you just started a business, go ahead and do this same exercise anyway. And what you're going to do is you're going to pull up all of the invoices that got paid during a month time frame. You can look at a couple months too, just to kind of get an average of what you're bringing home. Now, you don't have taxes taken out of your gross receipts. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to estimate your tax rate. And I would say probably when you're first starting, it's probably going to be around 11%, 12%. So I would just use that as a guesstimate. It may not be actual what you're actually going to pay at the end of the year, but I would subtract out about 12%, and then that will be your take home because you're going to have to pay your taxes.
For the business owners out there, you should be tracking your business expenses and income every single month, and you're going to use something called a profit and loss statement. So this is just an example from the internet, and let's just say this is 1 month's worth of income. So you have your income here, total, you have your cost of goods sold, which you subtract from your income, and you have your expenses that you also subtract. And then at the end of the day, there's some other miscellaneous expenses. So you only take home for 1 month $1,686.56. I just use 12% as a starting point. You can use your prior year taxes on what you actually paid, what your actual tax rate is, or you can consult your own tax professionals. I'm just using 12% as a good estimate. You'll have to do your own research for what works best for you. So 12% of this amount is $202. So your take home would only be $1,484.56. And this is what you would use to calculate how much income you're making if this is all the money that you are bringing in from your business.
Do that and then come up with that number, and then we'll get to the expenses. Figuring out your expenses can take a little bit more time because there's just more transactions. That just makes sense. Generally, you're probably using your bank statement to pay for a lot of things. So what I would do is I would go into your bank account and export your monthly bank statement, just pick 1 month and download that to Excel. That's how I like to do it because it makes it easier. As you're going through all of your transactions, on one of the cells, go ahead and enter in if it's food, if it's entertainment, if it's supplies, if it's utilities, if it's mortgage or rent, and then add all of those categories up. And that'll kind of show you what you're spending your money on and give you more insight into where all your money is going. I think you can do this in your app also. You can categorize each transaction as they come in, and I guess it just depends on what bank you use. But if you don't have that available, download it to Excel, go through all of the transactions for a month that you've spent money on and categorize it in a very simple way. So for example, if you've gone to the grocery store, just label it food. If you want to figure out, are you eating out a lot, then just put dining out. Try to go through and do that and see what you're spending your money on.
I wanted to show a quick example again because I think it's super helpful instead of just talking about it. But if you downloaded transaction history to Excel, this is what it would look like. And this is just a sample. It's just random numbers and things put in here just to kind of show you what this would look like. So this is for September, and it looks like there's a bunch of different things in here and amounts in here. And so when I mentioned about categorizing it and having a simple word or two to describe what this item is, this is what I meant. And then you can further break this down. So this person has total expenses of $3,600. And then if I actually break this down and subtotal it, you can see this person spent $267 on food. They have a $2,500 mortgage. So this is their total expenses. And I just made sure that all of the categories match. So I'm not missing anything here between this download and the categories. But this could help you see where you're spending your money on if you don't have a budget already and where you can actually potentially cut. Because sometimes you don't realize, wow, I'm spending a ton of money on food and didn't even realize until you actually go through and you categorize it.
Here's where it can get a little bit more complicated. If you're using credit cards, I do want you to do the same thing because we want to have a big picture or a full picture of everything that's going on with your finances. If you're spending money on your credit cards during the month, go into your credit card accounts and download those statements, export them to Excel if that's easier also, and then categorize them the same way. So if you're spending money on food, document that it's food and then add up all those categories together. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add the credit card expenses to your your bank statement expenses and then total those up, because we want to know exactly what number you're spending every single month, even if you're putting money on your credit cards. Now that you have your total expenses added up, you're going to want to subtract your income that you totaled from the expenses that you totaled, and you're going to get a number. This part always makes me nervous, but we promised at the beginning of this video that we weren't going to ostrich, okay?
So in this example, I just added in, I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, foreshadowing, dun dun dun. But let's just say this person makes $2,000 every paycheck. They get paid twice a month. So they would make about $4,000 during the month. And if they have $3,600 worth of expenses, you can see I moved those numbers down here. So they actually have $397 every single month of extra income, their net income. So this has no category. It's not attributable to anything. This is just what they have left over. So this should help you figure out where you're spending your money and tracking it and just knowing where your money is going. And like I said, you don't have to do it in Excel. I think you can do it in your bank account. You should have an option to do that. But this is actually really helpful when you're just starting to know where your money's all going, and then helping you figure out, am I going into debt or am I not? So the next section, you're actually going to add not just the credit card payment, but you're going to add in if you are paying other stuff on your credit card, if you're putting food on your credit card and you're putting entertainment on your credit card, you want to add that in, because that's also things and money that you're spending that you need to account for if you're not paying it off every single month. So you just want to get an idea of what you're spending.
Regardless of whatever number you get to, don't feel bad, okay? This is just a starting point. It is not your destiny. It is not your forever place. You can always get to a better place, and kudos to you for taking this step to figure out the starting point for your finances. All right, so here is the question. Do you have income left over after you've subtracted out all of the expenses that you spend during the month? If the answer is no, this step is for you, this section is for you, and I'm gonna start with a little pep talk of don't be ashamed of where you're at. This is just the starting point, as I just mentioned. I've been in this situation. I've been in debt where I was spending more than I was bringing home and got myself into financial trouble. Didn't even realize it at the time. So like I had mentioned earlier, you probably did not have the financial education, but the point is that you're getting it today, you're getting it now, you're taking the effort to get yourself to a better financial situation. So just acknowledge where you're at, understand that you may not be taking care of yourself financially and that you want to change it. Something that helped me when I was on my financial journey to financial wealth and financial abundance is that I ended up taking a course, and something that they taught me with this mindset, because you don't want to be stuck in this negative feelings and these bad feelings, feeling bad, feeling guilty, feeling ashamed. What you want to do is thank the debt for what it provided for you. Thank it and let it go. Thank you, debt, for getting me the things that I needed when I needed them. Thank you for helping me be independent. Thank you for helping me get what I needed when I needed them at the time that I needed them. And then let it go. You realize that the debt is no longer serving you. So I'm gonna use for this example an average salary of about $60,000 per year. So after taxes, you're probably taking home about $4,000 every single month. And that's the example that I'll use going forward, so it's easy and we can stay on track. So $4,000 a month is what you're bringing home. If you're adding up all of your expenses from your bank statement and all of your expenses from your credit cards, and you're spending, say, $4,500 every single month, you're going into debt $500 every single month. Now that is not supportive or beneficial, and it's not going to serve you in the long run. So once you recognize that you have more expenses than you do income, and you're not able to pay off that credit card balance every single month, there's a couple things you can do. But first, maybe your expenses equals your income. So this just means you're living paycheck to paycheck. So you might not be going into debt, but if you're bringing home $4,000 and you're spending $4,000, you're getting very, very close to that, then you don't have enough money to save or for retirement or for investment. As long as nothing goes wrong, you're okay. But the concern with this scenario and this situation, and I've also been in this situation, is that you're not going to have anything for a surprise bill or a car expense that comes up that you didn't plan for, or if you lose your job or if something happens to your hours and you're not able to work. So this is also not a very good, helpful, healthy situation to be in. So like I said, I've been here too. There are 3 main strategies that I've used to get myself out of both of those situations. If you're in debt or you're living paycheck to paycheck, so it doesn't matter which situation you're in, either of these will work. The very first strategy is pretty obvious, and that was just cutting expenses. So I had just gotten divorced and I had lost my job and I had no idea what I was gonna do. When you say panic, I was panicked. I had nothing and no one. And so the very first thing I just started doing was cutting out all of the expenses I possibly could. And you know, it's a really shitty place to be, being by yourself and having to make these kinds of decisions. But looking back, you just have to be proud of yourself for doing what you had to do to survive and get out of the situation that you're in. So no judgment here at all. I completely understand what you're going through. The second strategy takes a little bit more effort, and if you still have your job and you're not in the situation that I was, I would say try to find additional income. Try to get a second job, try to start a side hustle, side business, something. Try to bring in extra money so that you don't have to cut as many expenses. And then the third strategy is do a little bit of both. Cut a little bit of expenses. You don't have to be extreme like I had to be, and try to get some extra money coming in. So those are the 3 strategies. You can cut expenses, first of all. You can bring in extra income, second of all, or you can do a little bit of both. Here's what I did. The very first thing I did was I realized I had to move, and I cried. I called my realtor and I said, I cannot afford my mortgage. I need to move. I need to sell my apartment. So I did not make a lot of money off of it. I had only been in the apartment for just a couple of years, and this was in Hawaii when I lived there. And I ended up moving to a 400 square foot, teeny tiny little apartment in the middle of Honolulu. Now, I was fortunate that I found a place close to my new job, but the very most expensive thing you're probably noticing you spend your money on is your mortgage or your rent. That's probably the most expensive. And then the second most expensive is food. So the second thing I did was I started cutting out my food costs, and I was very unhealthy. I was eating a lot of processed, very cheap, very affordable food that has actually hurt my health that I'm still trying to recover from today. And not only that, but because of all the stress, I ended up not sleeping very well. I would say be careful with cutting expenses. If you can do it in a healthy way, please do that. Don't affect your health as much as I did, because it can take years to recover when you're putting unhealthy things in your body just to save some money. But again, no judgment, because I've been there, and you just have to look at your spending and figure out what can you cut out, what's unnecessary, especially a lot of the subscriptions, because I've noticed we are transitioning to a very subscription-based society. So look at the subscriptions that you're paying for and see what you can cut out. Now, I did decide to keep Netflix at the time because I had cut everything else out for entertainment, and that was my only source of entertainment. And so that's what I decided to keep. And I think it was maybe $7, $8 a month at the time. It's gone up since then. But just look at what you can cut and see what you can cut and do what you can. If you can't move, that's okay. I'm just telling you what I did. The other thing that you can do is call your credit card companies and tell them that you're having a financial hardship and ask them to reduce the interest that you're paying on those credit cards. They do not have to say yes, but you know, if you don't ask, it's always going to be a no. So at least you should try and call them and ask and see if you can lower those 16, 17, 24% interest rates on your credit cards, because that's just money going out the door. Don't even get me started on credit cards nowadays. I absolutely dislike them, but you should have them for emergencies and for shopping online, but you should be paying them off every single month in full. If you have a strategy to use them that way, that is probably the safest way to use them. Otherwise, don't use credit cards if you possibly can, because it's just robbery, because you're just spending so much money on interest. The last thing that I did was I used balance transfer cards. So I had a lot of credit cards because they were just sending me offers in the mail, and I would open a card and sometimes I would use them and sometimes I wouldn't. So I had a couple of cards that I hadn't used in a while and they had zero balance. And so the credit card companies were trying to get some of my fees. And so I paid 3%, 4% to transfer over some of my credit card balances from the 24% interest card to pay it off with 0%. And they give you a deadline. You have maybe 12 months to 18 months to pay off that balance in a relatively quick amount of time. And I say quick, but even though it's a year, it's still a lot of money to be paying off in that amount of time. So that's what I did. I ended up using balance transfer cards. There's 2 different methods you can do this to pay down your cards. There's a snowball method, and I'm sure you've heard of this before, where you take the lowest dollar balance of debt and you pay it off from lowest dollar balance to highest dollar balance. And so you feel really good when you can knock one credit card out or one loan out at a time. I ended up doing the avalanche method, and that just made more sense to me mathematically and financially. So the avalanche method is where you take the highest interest rate that you're paying on the card and you pay it off from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate, because you're actually spending more to pay down those cards with those higher interest rates than the lower balances. So I know this might not make sense, but this is just how I did it. It was the avalanche method. And I would try to pay that balance transfer off as soon as I could, and then I would do it again, and I would take and do another balance transfer. And that's how I got out of debt the first time. Now, I decided that I hadn't learned my lesson, and I had so much fun getting out of debt the first time, this is sarcasm by the way, that I decided to do it all over again, which is ridiculous. So now I'm an expert at getting into and out of debt. The first time I got out of debt just cutting expenses, it took me 3 years and took a toll on my emotional and mental and physical health. The second time around, I had gotten into debt because I had moved to Washington State from Hawaii for a better job, a job that I still have and I absolutely love to this day. And I had lost my travel income during the pandemic, and I had purchased a lot of things, and we had just moved into a new house. So we were putting a lot of things on credit cards to build out our basement and get that rented. And that didn't happen right away. So not only were we spending a lot of money and putting things on cards to get ourselves situated in our new home, which tends to happen, you don't realize you have to furnish a new home when you first move in, and losing a lot of my travel income. So I looked at my budget and I looked at where I was, and I told myself this time around, I'm not just gonna cut expenses. There's no way that I could just cut expenses and live my life the way I did the last time. It took way too long and I hated every minute of it. So I looked at, okay, well, how much more are my expenses than my income? And I started a business and I said, well, here's where I need to get to. I need to cover at least this much. And starting a side business and side income actually helped out a lot more. It was so much better for my mental health, and I ended up exceeding that number. So I was positive again. I had myself back into a better, healthier financial situation and was able to pay off all of my debt in that period of time. So it only took about maybe a little over a year to get everything paid off once things started opening and I was able to do a lot more. We had a plan in place, and that's what I would say is going into debt, you have the best intentions sometimes, but then life happened. It did help that we weren't traveling as much as we used to because we enjoy traveling together, but we were able to get out of debt the second time and never again. If you're looking for someone who you want to follow in their footsteps, look for someone who's 5 to 10 steps ahead of where you want to be. So if you're in debt and you're living paycheck to paycheck, this is going to be perfect for you. Now, I am not at the financial place that I want to be yet. In some of my other videos, I talk about my goal is being a millionaire boss in training. That is my saying, or millionaire babe in training, I would say. Get to the place you want to be. Follow the people who are just a few steps ahead of you, because they're going to have that current knowledge and expertise, and not just listen to anybody on the internet, but just get your information from good, reliable sources. I've gotten out of debt twice now, so I have many different kinds of experiences doing it many different ways, and I'm never getting into debt again. So knowing what I know now, I would recommend doing options 2 and 3, bringing in more income and cutting just a little bit of expenses. It's going to be so much easier for you on your health and mental well-being. Just understand that it's a process and it's going to take a while to get out of debt. It took a while to get into debt. As long as you're dedicated and taking those steps and taking those baby steps and moving forward, good for you, because you will eventually get there. If you have money left over, so we talked about if you're in debt and you're living paycheck to paycheck, but what if you're in a situation where you have income left over? So you took your $4,000 and say you are only spending $3,000 every single month in expenses. Well, you have $1,000 left over to do something with. So the very first thing I want you to look at and ask your employers, is there a 401k or some kind of retirement that they have that they will match what you put in? Because this is free money. You want to take advantage of this. If your employer is offering a 401k, for example, and they will match if you put in 3% of your gross pay, and they'll put in 3% and they'll match it. So you're essentially adding to your retirement 6% every single month, every single paycheck. This is what you want to do. I mean, it's free money. Don't turn it down. Figure out what you want to invest in, because they'll give you some options. It's not a lot, but they'll give you some options, and you need to do your research and figure out where your risk tolerance is and what you want to put your money in, and then contribute every single paycheck. So that'll take a little chunk out. I only recommend, and again, I'm not a financial advisor, but it just makes sense to me to only invest up to the match and then take whatever extra that I have and put it into other things, because like I said, there's only a couple of plans available, and I like to have my money in a lot of other places. You also need to have savings for an emergency fund. And this is for things like those emergency car repairs, a hospital bill, taking time off of work that's unexpected, or say you lose your job. You want to have money set aside in a liquid account that you can easily get to. This is not something that you want to put in investments. This isn't something that you want to put away for retirement. You want to have that money ready to go, easily accessible, generally earning you higher interest. You're not going to get a ton of interest on it, but that's not the point of an emergency fund. The emergency fund is there for you in the event of an emergency. And no, shopping on Black Friday and getting a TV on sale is not considered an emergency. You don't want to touch it for that.
Aw, man.
Start off with $1,000. Like, make that your goal to save at least $1,000 as your first baby step for your emergency fund. A lot of Americans don't even have that saved. If you Google this, you're gonna get a bunch of different statistics, but it's anywhere from 44% to 56% of Americans can't even cover a $1,000 emergency, and things happen and life happens. So you wanna have something set aside so that you don't have to go into debt for it. So start with $1,000, and then the goal would be to, your monthly expenses that you calculated earlier in this video. You want to save up a 1 month to a couple of months worth of expenses so that you can cover that in case something happens. You're good for a whole month and you don't have to worry. So imagine going to sleep at night, and if something happened tomorrow, you're okay for the next 30 days. Like, how good does that feel? I don't know, that feels really good to me. A lot of gurus will tell you to have at least 6 months to a year's worth of emergency funds on hand in case something happens. I would say you have to look at your own situation, because you may not need that much in an emergency fund. You may only need a month or two. So look at what kind of job you have, look at your industry, look at your economics, look at the place that you live in. Are there a lot of jobs available? Is there a low competition? So if you lost your job tomorrow, could you immediately just go out and the next day have another job at the same pay or more or slightly less? So would you be okay? And take that into consideration. You'll have to factor in your lifestyle. You'll have to factor in, what is best for yourself and your family. For me, in my situation, my full-time job, I don't have to really worry about. I'm pretty stable probably for the rest of my career. I don't generally have to worry about losing my job. So I don't need to have a lot of liquid emergency funds on hand. If that's you and that's your situation, and or you've already saved up the number of months that you feel comfortable with, the next thing that I would recommend is start saving for those big ticket items that you're gonna need down the road, or you're gonna need replacements for down the road. You know it's gonna happen. Like, say your refrigerator is gonna go out, or your AC unit or your heater is getting older, you're gonna have to replace that. Start budgeting for that now. Start setting aside money for that now, because it's not an emergency. You have it in mind. It's planned already. You know it's gonna happen and go down within the next year or so. Start saving for that. Start saving for those things so you don't have to go in debt to pay for those things. And like I said, it's not emergency. It's those things that you already are aware of that you're gonna need to replace or repair. So for example, I know that I'm gonna have to have a major car tune-up. So I'm gonna have to save up $1,500 to $2,000 so that I don't have to put that on a credit card. And or if I do put that on a credit card, that I have that money to pay it in full. For example, if I'm going to use that card strategically for points. Other things that you might be saving for are like a down payment on a house or down payment for a car, or say you want to upgrade something or go on a vacation. Start saving for that. You don't have to go into debt to have those nice things. The last thing that I'll highly recommend if you have extra income is have your own investments. And this is separate from retirement, it's separate from savings. You wanna have your own brokerage account with your own investments in them, separate from everything else. And this is wealth building. If you wanna look at someone who's 5 to 10 steps ahead of you, what are they doing? They have investments and they are investing regularly. This is gonna build your net worth because the stock market is gonna grow over time. And right now, if it's down, it's eventually gonna go back up. Don't worry about the short term. You're gonna have ups and downs, but invest for the long term, for yourself, for your future, and build that wealth up. That's one of my goals is I wanna have enough investments that my income from investments is making me more so I don't have to work one day. And that money is just coming to me passively because I've put money in over the longer period of time. And it's a long game. It's gonna take a long time to build that up, but that's where you wanna be if you have extra money after your expenses are paid. If you're curious on what I invest in and how to invest as a beginner, I'll link a video up above. I won't explain a lot in detail here because I already explained a lot in that video. That was a lot. So let's talk about this next topic, and that is the B word. Not that B word, I'm talking about budget. It's way worse, but it's boring and it sucks and I don't want to. I know, you don't want to hear it, neither do I. Actually, I do, I love my budget. Yeah, I get it. Budgets are not fun and nobody wants to do it. And you might actually feel like if you have a budget, then you're living in lack. But I'll tell you that you're not. You want to have a financial plan for your money. So very back in the beginning, we talked about making money your friend. You have to control your money, and to control your money, you have to have an assignment for every single dollar. And I use my budget to assign every dollar to a task. It's either going to pay for a bill, or it's going to support me in my emergency fund, or it's going to support me in saving for something big, or it's going to support me in investments or retirement. So every single dollar that I bring in every single month has a role and it's assigned to something. It's not just up in the air, left willy-nilly, because I will spend it on myself. That's how I got into debt the first 2 times. Not getting into debt ever again. That's just not on the cards for me, and I'll tell you why. I was actually addicted to my budget. I was addicted to the feeling of how good it felt to see myself pay things down, which is actually counterintuitive. So when I would pay down the balance, my brain would go, oh, there's nothing exciting for me to do. Well, why don't I just get into debt again? And then get that excited rush of paying things down and seeing the balances going down. So I actually figured this out in therapy, and I thought it would be helpful for you if you have a spending problem or an addiction to paying things down and watching the balances go down and seeing that progress. So you can change this in a way so that it would actually help you. And this is something that I had to work on, was realizing that I had to change my associations with what felt good. So now what feels good is how much money can I save every single paycheck to go towards the goals that I have to keep more money for myself. So putting more into my retirement, contributing to the match, putting money into my retirement accounts, putting money into investments, putting money into an emergency fund, and saving for other things. So that's what excites me now. That's what gets me more excited. And now I'm not so excited, and I actually feel dread when I put money on my credit cards, and I'm trying not to use them as much as I did before without a strategy in place. If you're getting points, you can use your credit cards strategically and having a plan to make sure those are paid off every single month. So if I put something on my credit card now, I make sure that I have that in my budget, and I'm not just putting things on cards and not including my card purchases in with my expenses. So hopefully that helps you. I thought that was fascinating for me to learn, was that it was actually an addiction. It was actually a financial problem that I had to deal with and go through. So now that I've switched that, I'm fairly confident that I'm not gonna get myself into debt like I did before, because my mindset has changed and my associations with what actually feels better and healthier for me is different than it was before. And honestly, the first step in recognizing that you have a problem, if you notice a pattern going on, is to acknowledge it. So if you're here today and you're acknowledging it and you're ready to get started, good job. There's no one size fits all when it comes to a budget, but you want to be tracking what you're spending every single month. So the first exercise that you did when you wrote down all of your expenses and you divided them into the categories, go back to that and figure out, well, how much are you spending every month on utilities? How much are you spending every month on food? And what you want to do is kind of get yourself in line with where you want to be. So if you're spending everything every single month, but you want to have money in savings, or you want to start contributing to your retirement, start to change things a little bit. So either you need to bring in more income, you need to cut expenses, or you need to do a little bit of both. And you know where I stand on that. So for me, what works for me, and I've done this for many, many years, is keeping an Excel spreadsheet. So every paycheck I'll break down and I know exactly what expenses I need to pay for which paycheck. And I have to split some things between two paychecks because I pay the mortgage. And that's fairly large. So I have to split that between two paychecks. But I'll tell you, one of the other benefits to having a budget is that you don't have to be afraid of overdrafting. You're not gonna ever overdraft. I think it only happened to me once or twice in the entire time that I've been alive, because I'm able to balance down to the penny and I know exactly where my money is going. So I'm not worried about overdrafting. You can avoid those kinds of fees, do so, because that's another thing I think is wasteful spending. My husband, for example, he does budgeting a little bit differently. He'll take one of his paychecks and the entire paycheck is used to pay for all of the expenses that he has, and then everything left over is just spending. So he does it a little bit differently than I do. I have a lot more coming out of my account, so I have to track them based on what day those items are coming out, because I do use automatic payments. So I don't have to worry about going into my accounts every single month and paying for things that already just come out of my account every single month. So figure out what works for you. If you can find a budgeting app, or you can do it in Excel, or you can just track it based on what's in your bank balance and just making sure everything's paid and in full and you're good for the entire month, you figure out what works best for you. But if you look at financial gurus, and I'll tell you because I work with a lot of financial institutions, it doesn't matter if they're small or if they're over $1 billion. Every single financial institution has a budget. Every single business should have a budget in place, and you can plan it out for years to come, and that's what I do. I can kind of figure out what raises I'm gonna get, what big plans I have, and plug all those in, so I have an idea and goals in mind of where my money is going to be going and when I'll reach financial goals, which is a lot more exciting for me now than just putting things on credit cards and paying it down. If you're interested in pursuing more financial education, personal development, or elevating your life, you're going to want to check out this video next, and I'll see you next week.